Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Heather Yost with the Take Your Life Back Summit. We're on a mission to help people feel hope, find answers, and start healing. We're exploring over 21 experts' roadmaps out of chronic pain, fatigue, and or autoimmune disorders. I am so excited to welcome Dr. Jaffe to our summit. I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about Dr. Russell Jaffe. For over 30 years, he's sort of been rethinking healthcare. As a physician and a scientist who aspired to be comprehensive, objective, empiric, and experiential, Dr. Jaffe started his career searching for deeper understanding, wisdom, evidence, and insight into mechanisms of health. Through intense curiosity and learned skepticism, Dr. Jaffe sought to debunk the best-known advocates of a variety of health promotion and healing systems. What started as a journey to disprove holistic forms of care became a rich educational experience that transformed Dr. Jaffe into a student and then researcher in such areas as traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, active meditation, systems biology, and manipulative arts. Through this journey, Dr. Jaffe came to a stunning realization: the Western model of healthcare he studied, trained in, and practiced for so long was fundamentally flawed. He learned that system suppression is not the same as health prevention. Sick care is not the same as healthcare. Information is not the same as inspiration. Most importantly, he learned that treating disease is not the same as treating people. Welcome, Dr. Jaffe.
Thank you, Dr. Yost. A pleasure to be here and to support your summit.
Thank you so much. You really went from a skeptic to a believer to a healer.
Well, I had 8,000 hours after college in Boston and then at the National Institutes of Health. I was considered to be one of the, quote, best and brightest. And the idea that there would be whole healing art systems that could accomplish benefits, could reduce risks, could improve outcomes, of which we were ignorant, seemed unthinkable. If there was real value in TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, or Ayurveda, or mindfulness practices, we would be researching it, we would be understanding it, we would have it in our curriculum, we would be training doctors about it. Well, I didn't get much training about lifestyle medicine, what we would call epigenetics today. I didn't get much training in relationships, intimacy, and communication, so that people actually followed through on recommendations. So there are lots of issues, and it has been a very interesting journey to discover first ignorance, to sit at the feet of those who had experience and were generous in their teachings. And then in my particular case, I often became the physician to the person who had been my mentor source of information. And that's a very different relationship.
Yeah, amazing. You really have had quite the journey and the transformation. You mentioned, I know that being a skeptic and being somebody who really, you didn't know a lot about like holistic natural forms, preventative type healthcare. What made you finally to say, I've got to learn more about this, and what started that transition?
Well, right. So here I was in the United States Public Health Service, assigned to the National Institutes of Health. I'm a resident in clinical laboratory medicine, clinical pathology. That's my job. And I heard in the early 70s that acupuncture, wounding people, needling people, could accomplish things in some cases and consistently accomplish things that we were ignorant, didn't know anything about.
Amazing.
In Washington, D.C., there was Queen Wu, on MacArthur Boulevard, and there were only about 6 or 8 of us in the first cohort. It was a 7-year apprenticeship. So in addition to my day job for 7 years, I spent most of my evenings and some Sundays at Queen Wu's studio, at his center. And who was there? Patch Adams, J.J. Johnson. A very interesting group of people eclectically called, electively deciding to do this, even though it wasn't required. You know, we were all credentialed. We could have all stopped and said, we know what we know, and that's enough. But all of us had this kind of thought in the back of our heads, if not in the front of our heads, that there was much more to the healing arts than just treating disease. And yes, it's important to make the diagnosis, and yes, it's important to know how to treat it conventionally, but what about all of the other nature, nurture, and wholeness approaches that actually might be more suited to that individual, might be lower risk and higher gain? And by the way, we do bury 1 million people a year early at very high cost, $8 trillion to the balance sheet of the country. Well, we should stop doing that.
Right, and start asking better questions.
Asking better questions. 500,000 people die from complications of diabetes. Now, diabetes kills and diabetes costs, but diabetes is a choice. You can control your blood sugar. I prefer to control blood sugar in a more natural way using whole foods and targeted supplementation. But whether it's pharmaceutical or nutraceutical, you can control blood sugar, and the complications of diabetes are a function of blood sugar out of control. And we can measure hemoglobin A1C, a commonly measured test, and we even know the best outcome value now. And I now want to turn laboratory medicine on its head, and I want to look at predictive tests. I want to look at the tests that can help me know 5 to 10 years ahead when a person's going to have a problem, so that we can reduce the risk now, so that we can return to the best outcome goal value for each of the predictive biomarker tests, one of which is hemoglobin A1C.
Right. I like that you said diabetes is a choice. I think we forget that our health is really in our own hands, and you got to choose a lifestyle that supports the best outcome.
Live in harmony with your nature, but that means you have to know your nature. So yes, some people have a lifestyle that allows them to have cake at lunch. In Heidelberg, Germany, that's the culture. But they're also physically very active, and it's a small piece of cake.
Right. Not the traditional dessert that you get in a restaurant.
Not the Mitschlag and all the extra sugar. Our grandparents, if I remember this correctly, our grandparents ate in a whole year the amount of processed sugar that the average American now eats in less than a week.
Unbelievable. And that our children
That's a terrible burden. That's a terrible burden on a system that has evolved over a long period of time. Our genetics hasn't changed in a short period of time. Our disease expression, however, has changed dramatically in a short period of time. In the year 1900, among adults 40 years of age or more, so let's not, we're not going to talk about childhood illness right now, but among adults 40 years of age or more, lifespan has increased a couple of years. Cancer used to be 1 in 1,000. It's now 1 in 3.
Wow.
Heart disease was so rare that Paul Dudley White taught me and others that in the 1920s and 30s, when they were working out this machine called an electrocardiogram, an ECG machine, if they had one heart attack patient at Mass General Harvard in an entire year, they published the case because cardiovascular disease was rare. And then in one generation, it became the most common killer of Western civilization. Clearly, something changed in what we ate, in our relationships, in our environment, in our toxin burden or our nutritional adequacy. Something changed for the worse and quickly. And the good news is it could change for the better and quickly if we would simply apply what we know, but we don't yet widely apply. So
right.
We can be our own doctor much of the time. I think we should be our own doctor and get knowledgeable about how to be our own doctor, living in harmony with our nature, using whole foods, foods we can digest, assimilate, and eliminate without immune burden, having neurohormonal balance, getting restorative sleep, having good relationships, being optimistic, learn optimism. In my family, first of all, we scream, because if you're not screaming, no one hears you in my family. Sorry, it's just the way it is. And I have to introduce people that they're not deaf, they just scream. And the other side, which kind of goes along with that, is if you're willing to listen, you might learn.
I like that.
But if you're so busy conveying your message, thinking about the response you're next going to have to whatever the other person is saying, You might miss the moment. And this is a classic metaphor, but in essence, too many people, they sacrifice their health to gain wealth. They then use their wealth to regain their health.
Oh, wow. Yep.
And because they live so much in the past and in the future, when they finally pass away, they have barely lived any meaningful moment in the now. Dalai Lama says that. He happens to be my daughter's godfather. He's a wonderful human being. He says his religion is kindness and compassion. I joined that religion.
I love that.
Right.
I love that.
But we have good role models. We just have to be willing to step up and make it real for ourselves, rather than recognize that, yes, there was Gandhi. Yes, there was Martin Luther King. Yes, there were these great people who have shown us the way. Well, they showed us the way. They lit a candle. So we should go get a little candle ourselves and get a flame off of theirs.
Agreed, very much. Can you mentioned that that you do testing or recommend testing that gives you sort of a 5 to 10 year predictive window. Can you speak more on that?
Yes, these are called biomarker tests, but specifically predictive biomarker tests. And more specifically, there's a subset, there's 8 of them, out of hundreds of thousands of tests. But there's 8 that cover all of lifestyle, that covers all of epigenetics, covers all of the things we can influence with our habits of daily living. And these include the hemoglobin A1C that I mentioned. Then there's HSCRP, a measure of inflammation and repair. Then there's homocysteine, which is a measure of what we call methylation and detoxification and sulfur metabolism, but another important risk area for all-cause morbidity, mortality. Then there's LRA, lymphocyte response assay. Are you tolerant to the foods you're eating, or are the foods you're eating attacking you immunologically? Then we do measure vitamin D level, and we check the urine acid status, the pH of the urine after rest, to look at minerals inside the cells. I can explain that if you want me to. And then we look at essential fats, the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, called the omega-3 index test. And then one urine test, which measures the nucleus, the DNA, both the mitochondrial and the cell nucleus DNA, oxidation state. You don't want to be overly oxidized and damaged and rusted in your nucleus or in your mitochondria. So these 8 tests have been done on all populations all around the globe. The first 4 have been validated for 10-year plus survival. If you're at your best outcome value for these tests, you have a 99% chance of living 10 or more years. And if you're at the other end of the scale, as too many people are, you might have a 1 in 5 chance of living 10 or more. So it's a dramatic difference, and we know the tests to do, we just haven't understood how to apply them to individuals. So these are predictive, they're proactive, they're preventive, primary preventive, and they're personalized.
What age should somebody start to get these tests done? And then how often?
Well, the age you should start getting these done is as soon as you're not young and immortal. Most of us at some point are young enough that we think we're young and immortal, and we're not going to do anything anyway. So as soon as you're not young and immortal, that means a young adult to me.
Right.
Okay, so I would do this as soon as I was an independent, emancipated adult. And how often would I do it? Well, it really depends on how close I was to the goal values on my first test, because if I'm at my goal value for each of these 8 tests, which means I'm in a very highly healthy state, then I would want to be coached about how to enhance that health resilience through mindfulness practices, through certain kinds of stretching, could be like Traeger mentastics or Feldenkrais or Nat Baniel method or Alexander technique. So that there's always nuances that allow us to improve upon very good. But what if you're not at your goal value? What if your hemoglobin A1C or HSCRP or homocysteine or LRA test shows that there is improvement, that you can, over just a few months, make that will add life to years and years to life. It will add quality to the life that you live, and it will add duration to the life that you have. So if you're at your goal value and you're young, I would do them every 5 years. If you're over 60, I would do them every year. If you're not at your goal value, then I would work intensively to get yourself back to your goal values, and then I would follow through as I recommended. So it depends on how close are you to your optimum health quotient.
Right. I like that. I think that gives some specific markers for people to go by dependent upon age and health value. Could you speak a little bit? I hear people say, I've heard people say, I guess, that supplements are just expensive urine.
Well, by the way, Abraham White is the man quoted as saying that, and I knew Abe White, and he says he never said that. But it is one of the most repeated myths, one of the most repeated incorrect statements. It's like saying eating food makes expensive poop and urine. Why? Because eventually most of what you eat comes out in poop and urine. No, but we need food to survive. Yet the food is not as nutrient dense, and it is more intoxicated, and our environment is more toxic by hundreds of orders of magnitude in some cases. And our lifestyle is more stressed and distressed. We have less nurturing relationships and more deadlines than 50 and 100 years ago. So there's lots of reasons why we would need to have high nutrient density foods. And then you look at our food system, and it's mostly packaged and processed. And when I see packaged and processed, first of all, I know I'm going to pass that by in the store because I don't need packages and I don't need processed foods. I buy whole foods, and I buy them from whole food markets or farmers markets or community-supported CSA farms or biodynamic sources if possible. And then we happen to have a permaculture food forest in our front yard to supplement that. So we can live in harmony with our nature. We can use these tests to find out whether we're at our best outcome value or not. And then we can take action well ahead of time before a catastrophe, before a cardiovascular event, a heart attack or a stroke, or some other chronic illness, autoimmune or inflammatory or other, emerges.
Right. I like that you said it's not just quantity of years, it's quality of years, and being mindful over the way we're living our lives. Because you can't just take a supplement or eat a healthy meal. It's got to be repetitious lifestyle habits and behaviors. Are there differences? I mean, I know, like you said, you pass up the processed and the packaged foods for quality food. Is there a difference in supplementation? Are there packaged crap supplementation?
No, thanks for bringing me back to that. There are many problems in all aspects of food, supplements, and pharmaceuticals. So we can improve upon all of it. If we focus on supplements, if you followed full pharmaceutical good manufacturing practices, the good thing about that is everybody who touches it, and you know what they did, and there's no substitutions, there's no confusion. Unfortunately, regulation is a little bit too loose in some ways in regard to foods for special dietary use. That's what the technical word is for supplements. So we pioneered at PERC the following. We would follow all the structural constraints for quality control that they do in the pharmaceutical industry, full pharma GMPs, but only use natural products, and by the way, only use the form of a nutrient shown beneficially helpful in an outcome study. Because in my experience, the workalikes don't work. So selenomethionine is a very safe form of selenium, and I often give people that to help them use their vitamin E and other protective antioxidants better. But other forms of selenium, I don't recommend at all and should be limited because of potential adverse events. And I could go through every one of the nutrients. The forms shown beneficial in outcome studies are very promising, hard to get, expensive, hard to work with, but worth it. And then we added one more element that others are beginning to recognize, and that is third-party post-production testing. So we start with the form shown beneficial in a peer-reviewed study. We add to that the quality control of full GMPs, and then we have a third-party independent reference lab that confirms that what is there, and what is not is not. We've been doing this, as you know, for 30 years. When we started, people told me that the effort would be so great, the cost would be so great, that it would be a hobby. It wouldn't be a business. Well, we took the marketing budget that most companies use and put it into the cost of our products on the basis that word of mouth is the best advertising. And I will tell you, it's not a hobby, it's a business. Because some people want full disclosure. Some people want the fully active, transport enhanced, and chaperone delivery forms of nutrients. Some people want tabsules because of the problems with tablets and capsules. They want forms that dissolve under the tongue before swallowing, or lozenges, or whole meals, or liquids, or whatever is the most effective, safer way to deliver that nutrient density, to restore the nutrients we need to survive in the 21st century, where the toxins and stresses are much higher. I don't think anyone disagrees that the toxic metals, the hormone disruptors, the solvent residues, the the mold products, and the radioisotopes are much richer in the environment. We're marinating in a sea of these toxins, and they all use up the essential antioxidant buffering mineral cofactors that life depends upon. So it's not a surprise to me, and to those of us who are into the molecular details and the systems biology, it's not a surprise that we must have quality supplements to survive in the 21st century.
And are you also saying that just because it's over the counter or it's a vitamin or it's a supplement that it's not necessarily safe or a quality product?
No, I'm saying that there is, unfortunately, many people who will do anything that they can in an unscrupulous fashion to just make money. I do not recommend that people use most supplements. A, because they use work-alike ingredients that, in my opinion, don't work. B, because they are often contaminated. And C, when colleagues of mine did a study at the United States commissaries. Now, the commissaries serve military. It's not a government business, but it serves people on bases where service people are, and you would assume that their quality control would be as good as others. 80% of the dietary supplements didn't even meet the label claims, let alone have any bioavailability data. So I am being very clear to call out people because I am knowledgeable. Why? Because I'm in the industry, not by choice, but of necessity. And I can tell you it can be done. That is, you can have a quality product with enhanced uptake, chaperone delivery, third-party post-production testing, full GMPs, and only using the forms shown beneficial in outcome studies, not the so-called workalikes that are inexpensive, and I don't doubt that they're inexpensive, but they don't work, at least not in my experience, and the evidence, I think, supports that.
And ideally, people aren't going about self-diagnosing and self-treating.
Well, see, that's a very important point, Dr. Yost. I recommend dietary supplements to promote good health. As a physician, I might want to talk to you about the inflammatory repair deficit condition, but I don't treat that with supplements. Supplements are to remove obstacles to recovery and evoke healing responses. They don't diagnose and they don't treat. Why? Because that's what medical doctors do. And I spent a lot of time to get a lot of the credentials, including licenses in multiple states. And I'm a medical doctor. I'm the one who's supposed to make the diagnosis. So I think they're completely different worlds. I have seen many people go into remission from mystery conditions where the diagnosis was never clearly made because they restored the competence to their microbiome and their digestion. They took quality supplements in the combination that they needed, in the amounts that they needed, for the time that they needed, under guidance if needed. And that's what I recommend.
Can you give us an example of a patient of yours, what they came in with, what their testing looked like, their treatment and recovery?
I can. Here's a typical person. And I think this applies, if I remember correctly, to something like 80% of people coming to doctors. Doctor, I'm just not feeling right. I get up in the morning, I can go to work, but I'm really not rested. I'm kind of tired too much of the time. After lunch, I have to get my work done in the morning because after lunch I'm kind of foggy. I'd like to stay up, but I really can't, and I toss and turn. Help me. Oh. Well, at a minimum, let's check some things like how long from the time you eat until you eliminate. Oh, doctor, I'm regular. I go to the bathroom every day. Okay. Is what came out today from yesterday or last week? We have a transit time test, and you can find out and then tell me. And are you well hydrated? Oh, doctor, I don't drink a lot of water. I drink some time. I drink diet beverages. Yes, I kind of like black tea or coffee, occasionally adult beverage, maybe more than occasionally. So that's my hydration test. I'm well hydrated. My skin goes flat in 1/1000. We want you to test if you're well hydrated. Hooray! If you're even a little bit dehydrated, what I recommend is get a carafe and fill it with water and get a glass. If the glass is empty, fill it from the carafe. If the glass is full, drink it. And just keep doing that all day. But keep it in front of you, because if it's not in your line of sight, you might forget to drink the water. And yes, you can have herbal teas. You can have fruit spritzers. There are all sorts of things that make water more interesting. Sparkling, still, this, that. So we have self-assessments, including, for example, what is the urine pH, how acid or alkaline is the urine, after 6 hours of rest. It's a non-invasive measure of cellular mineral status, particularly magnesium. And by the way, the nation is deficient in magnesium. And by the way, in the last 60 years or so, availability of magnesium in the diet from food has gone down by half, and need for magnesium has gone up by a factor of at least 2. That's, as my grandmother used to say, the rents are going up and the ceilings are coming down. That's not a good trend. So we have pioneered enhanced uptake and delivery systems based on self-assessments that incorporate quality supplements targeted based on these either self-assessments or predictive biomarker tests, so that we're not just flying blind. We're not just believing in supplements. We're actually measuring whether the supplements are helping or not, and we're making sure people don't get more than they need, but not less than they need. And I often find colleagues who know that people need supplementation, but they don't give enough. And if you get 10% or 20% of what you need, you still need 90 or 80% more to get the full benefit. So since we have these self-assessments and now these predictive biomarkers with best outcome, 10-year predictive, all-cause morbidity, mortality indications, we can get evidence-based but very personalized. We can be very specific, but also very 21st century. And that is one of the points, as you know, that I try to emphasize, which is that we do need more nutrient density today. We need quality foods and quality lifestyles, because it's about what we eat, drink, think, and do. You can't take 2 B6 to equal a B12. No matter how optimistic you are, you still have to move a certain number of steps a day. And I can tell you from personal experience, I enjoy meditation for quite some time because my dad was quite a good athlete. I visualized myself exercising. And I slowly gained 60 pounds. And I have lost that 60 pounds and I don't plan to find it.
Right. Right.
Because I changed my lifestyle. Why? I wanted to live. I want to live as long as I'm allowed to live. And I want to function well. I want to die as young as possible, as late as possible, as my friend loves.
Right. Right. Boy, yeah, I love it. I love that. Right back to quantity and quality of life is what we all need to strive for.
Yes, and if I can throw in just a little chestnut there, eat half, walk twice, forgive thrice, and love unconditionally.
Say that one more time.
Right. Eat half, walk twice, forgive thrice, and love unconditionally.
Love unconditionally. Very
A
good.
challenge, but a worthy challenge. And if you look across all wisdom traditions, they more or less say the same thing. Do you know that there are very few fat saints?
Right.
Saints
Right.
don't tend to overeat.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting.
And I will tell you a little personal anecdote. I had a friend, Roger Toll, who's a wonderful Traeger practitioner, massage teacher. He looked at me one evening and he said, "Do you have any concept of portion control?" Now, I was eating good foods. I had advanced to at least eating good foods.
Right.
I ate my fill. And my fill was about twice what I needed.
Right. Right.
And now I really do eat half and walk twice.
That's good.
And I'm working on the forgive thrice and the
Oh, yeah, I love that. Well, in being respectful of your time, we need to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes.
Yes.
I have two really fast questions for you, just for fun. If I was to open up your refrigerator, what would be two things I would see every time?
If you opened up my refrigerator, the two things you would see every time are lots of colorful whole fruits and vegetables and wine.
And wine. I love it. So
But good wine. And I give everyone permission to only have good wine because it doesn't have all that chemical finishing.
Yep.
And they talk about finished wines, and I think that's finished, which means they're not drinkable.
Right. Right.
So permission to have a little bit of good stuff.
That's good. So what about if you were stuck on a desert island and you could only take two products or supplements, vitamins, what would you take?
Very good question. If I was on a desert island, I would recognize that the sun would be a source of many nutrients for me as long as I could protect myself from the sun. So there I must have ascorbate.
Very good.
And for me, that means ascorbate based on the sea cleanse. So I'm going to have a bunch of that ascorbate. I think if I was on an island, where whatever I'm going to eat, it's going to be whole food. And if I'm going to catch a fish, it's going to be a whole fish. So I'm going to have fair nutrient density. So I'm not so concerned about having a multivitamin.
Right.
And I'm not even so concerned about having a detoxifier or a liver protector. Why? Because I'm on a desert island where I don't have the stresses of high-tech living and I've got some whole foods to eat. But the one that I would be concerned about is the magnesium. Because I'm just deposited on that desert island, having lived in society, which means chronic latent magnesium deficiency, a condition defined by Ron Elleen and now validated by others. And so for me today, and I might change my mind at another time, it would be ascorbate, vitamin C, but in its fully buffered, fully reduced form. And it would be magnesium, but in an enhanced uptake chaperone delivery form.
Very good. And really, anybody from anywhere in the country can work with you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, yes. I had to decide early on, did I want to set up my own clinic and try and serve individuals and colleagues, or did I want to train physicians in this, quote, better approach and have laboratories and services and so forth? So we certify people in the WellGuard program through the Health Studies Collegium. We have lymphocyte response assays and other specialized predictive biomarkers available through ELISAAct.com. We have these professional supplements and professional grade supplements available through perk.com. And we have betterlabtestnow.com, which is a portal that allows individuals who want information, inspiration, and interpretation to get quality tests and then have counseling about what it means. Because information on a piece of paper is one thing, but the limitations, that is the variance, how precise is the test, how meaningful is the test, and what to do about the test, that's where we specialize.
Very good. And I'm including links so that the listeners can find you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. This has really been a fun, valuable talk. I've appreciated spending this time with you.
Mutually so.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaffe. I just want to say thanks to all of our listeners as well for joining us on the Take Your Life Back Summit. Watch your inbox every morning because you do not want to miss the upcoming experts and their particular roadmaps out of chronic pain, fatigue, and autoimmune disorder. Again, this is Dr. Heather Yost with the Take Your Life Back Summit. Take care, be well, and I will see you tomorrow.